In the 19th century, building a colonial empire was a massive state enterprise. It took national armies, parliamentary debates, and the full weight of a government treasury to conquer and hold overseas territory. This map shows a 2D projection of Belgium, and this is the Congo Free State, an area 76 times larger. That citizen happened to be King Leopold II. He was the monarch of Belgium, a relatively small, neutral country whose parliament flatly refused to spend public money on colonial adventures. Leopold desperately wanted the immense wealth and international prestige that came with overseas territory, but without the backing of his own treasury or a national military, he had no traditional way to secure it. So he bypassed his own government entirely. He decided to treat the colonization of Central Africa not as a state duty, but as a privately funded, completely unregulated corporate startup. To get the capital and cover he needed, Leopold set up the International African Society in 1876. On paper, it was a philanthropic and scientific association dedicated to exploring and uplifting Africa. In practice, it was a private holding company. Operating under the banner of this humanitarian charity, Leopold hired the famous explorer Henry Morton Stanley. Stanley's job was to map the Congo River basin and get local leaders to sign over their land rights through localized treaties. By the time the major powers gathered at the Berlin Conference in 1884 to divide up the continent, Leopold had his paperwork ready. He convinced the representatives of 14 nations, plus the United States, that his charity would maintain a free trade zone and improve the lives of the local population. They agreed to recognize his personal claim. He had successfully secured an empire by posing as a humanitarian, and because the territory was tied to him personally, not to the Belgian state, he now operated in a total vacuum of power with zero government oversight. Initially, Leopold extracted ivory, but in the 1890s, the global manufacturing boom in bicycles and automobiles triggered an explosion in the demand for natural rubber. The Congo was rich in rubber vines, and harvesting the milky sap was extremely labor-intensive. Leopold immediately abandoned the free trade promises he made in Berlin. He issued decrees declaring all unoccupied land belonged directly to him. Any rubber harvested from that land was therefore his personal property, instantly creating a legal monopoly. To extract the rubber, he needed labor. To enforce that labor, he built the Force Publique. This was a mercenary army acting as the militarized security wing of his private corporation. The Force Publique imposed strict rubber collection quotas on local villages. If a community failed to meet their quota, the retribution was brutal. Soldiers would routinely burn villages, carry out mass executions, and take women and children hostage to force the men to work. The violence was managed through a strict accounting rule. Ammunition imported from Europe was expensive. To prove they weren't wasting bullets on hunting, soldiers were required to present the severed hand of their victim for every cartridge they fired. This system had no interest in governance or infrastructure. It was a perfectly optimized extraction machine, treating human life purely as an expendable capital expense. The trauma of the quota system fractured Congolese society. Between the systematic murder, the exhaustion from forced labor, and the resulting famine and vulnerability to epidemic diseases like sleeping sickness, the population collapsed. This bar chart illustrates the demographic tragedy. Consensus estimates the Congo's population plummeted by 10 million. The wealth generated by this catastrophic loss bypassed the Belgian state treasury, flowing directly into Leopold's personal bank accounts. Leopold used these vast rubber profits to commission massive urban projects, public parks, and monuments across Belgium. These projects earned him a popular nickname at home, the Builder King. The opulence of Europe was being built on a foundation of extreme violence. Belgium's most celebrated national monuments were directly subsidized by a private demographic catastrophe in Africa. The secrecy of Leopold's private empire eventually broke down at the shipping docks. A shipping clerk named E.D. Morel noticed a glaring discrepancy in the company ledgers. Ships arriving from the Congo were packed with valuable rubber, but the ships heading back were carrying almost nothing but military-grade weapons and soldiers. Suspicions grew until the British Crown sent Consul Roger Casement to investigate. Casement traveled extensively through the region, collecting eyewitness testimonies that provided undeniable documented proof of the atrocities. The publication of the Casement report triggered widespread international outrage. It led to the founding of the Congo Reform Association, a coalition that mobilized writers like Mark Twain and Arthur Conan Doyle in what became the world's first mass human rights movement. The public pressure mounted from both international governments and domestic politicians. In 1908, the Belgian parliament finally acted, forcing the king to formally relinquish his private ownership of the Congo to the civil administration. But Leopold treated this surrender like a corporate buyout. As a condition for handing over the territory, he forced the Belgian government to absorb the colony's immense debt, pay 45 million francs for his ongoing construction projects, and hand him a personal payout of 50 million francs. Even as he was being deposed for orchestrating mass atrocities, he used the mechanics of a corporate bailout to secure a massive financial victory for himself. Before handing over control, Leopold worked to cover his tracks. He ordered the entire archive of the Congo Free State to be burned, telling an aide that while the territory was being taken from him, the public had no right to know what he did there. Leopold died from an embolism in 1909, just a year after losing his colony. To prevent his vast portfolio of privately amassed real estate from being split among his daughters, he established a royal trust, transferring the properties to the Belgian nation in perpetuity. For decades after his death, the atrocities faded from public discussion. The Belgian government actively celebrated his accomplishments, erecting statues of him across the country to honor his legacy exclusively as the Builder King. That historical amnesia is finally breaking. During the racial justice protests in the summer of 2020, demonstrators forced a public audit of his legacy, directly targeting his monuments and successfully demanding the removal of several statues. The history of the Congo Free State is a stark outlier. King Leopold II proved exactly what happens when imperial ambition is stripped of all state oversight, leaving only a system of pure, unregulated profit, backed by extreme violence and operating at a limitless human cost.